If you've ever been desperate for money, you know that your standards for a workplace drop pretty fast. One day you're looking for internships at law firms, and the next you're agreeing to work the graveyard shift at a gas station that smells like diesel and desperation, located 30 miles outside of civilization. I needed $4,000 for my tuition by the end of the month. Tech Stop and Go was offering $20 an hour plus hazard pay for the overnight shift. I didn't ask what the hazard was. I assumed it was the usual stuff: meth heads, armed robbery, or maybe just the soul. Crushing boredom of staring at a wall of beef jerky for 8 hours straight. I was wrong. I pulled my beat, up Toyota into the lot at 9:45 p.m. The station was a little island of fluorescent light in a sea of absolute darkness. It sat on a forgotten stretch of Route 66 that the interstate had bypassed decades ago. The neon sign buzzed with an angry, insectoid hum. Stop and go. The O and go flickered rhythmically, like a nervous tick. I walked inside. The chime above the door didn't ding, it rasped. Tex was behind the counter. He was a man who looked like he was made out of old leather and cigarette smoke. He was chewing on a toothpick that had been splintered down to nothing. "You're the college kid," Tex grunted, not looking up from the register. "Yeah, Mike, I'm here for the 10 to 6. Tex looked at me then. His eyes were watery and gray, surrounded by a road map of wrinkles. He looked tired, not sleepy. Tired, but the kind of tired that settles deep in your bones after years of carrying something heavy. "Right," Tex said. He stepped out from behind the counter. He was wearing a grease-stained uniform with the name patch ripped off. "Here's the deal, Mike. It's simple. Keep the coffee hot. Mop the floors if someone tracks in mud, and don't leave the cage." He gestured to the glass partition around the counter. I had thought it was just standard plexiglass, the kind you see at every 7-Eleven. But looking closer, I saw it was thick, bulletproof, and it went all the way to the ceiling. There wasn't even a gap to slide money through, just a reinforced metal drawer like they have at banks. "Seems excessive," I said, dropping my backpack on a stool. "You get a lot of robberies out here." Tex laughed. It was a dry hacking sound. "Robbery ain't the problem, kid. Theft implies they want something you can replace." He grabbed a set of keys and slammed them onto the counter. "I'm leaving. My shift ends the second you clock in." "I don't stay a minute past 10. He started walking toward the door, moving with a surprising amount of speed for a guy with a limp. "Wait," I called out. "Is that it? What about the register? What about policy?" Tex stopped at the door. He didn't turn around. He just pointed a finger. I noticed then that his pinky and ring finger were missing, sheared off cleanly at the knuckle, at a laminated sheet of paper taped to the counter next to the lottery machine. "The list," Tex said. "Read the list, follow the list. Do not deviate from the list." "What list?" "Shoplifters." Tex opened the door. The night air rushed in, cold and silent. "Number just customers we don't serve. If you see 'em, you lock the drawer, you kill the lights, and you wait." "Wait for what?" "For them to lose interest." And with that, Tex was gone. I watched him sprint, to his truck, peel out of the lot, and disappear down the highway. I was alone. I looked around the empty store. The hum of the refrigerator seemed to get louder. Hum, click, I sighed, and looked down at the counter. The laminated sheet was yellowed with age, the corners peeling. It looked like it had been typed on a typewriter from the 70s. Tech Stop and Go few night shift protocols read carefully. Failure to comply constitutes immediate termination, of employment or otherwise. I scoffed. "Drama queen," I muttered. I leaned in to read the first few lines. "1. The man with the coin eyes. He will ask for a pack of Lucky Strikes. We do not sell Lucky Strikes. Do not look directly at the coins over his eyes. If you see the date on the coins, that is the year you will die. 2. The high-octane milk. If a customer asks for high-octane milk, tell them we are out. Do not check the back. If they insist, hand them a bottle of 10W-30 motor oil. They will drink it and leave. Do not charge them. 3. The phone may ring at 3:33 a.m. The caller ID will display Mom. Do not answer it. Your mother is not calling. If you answer, she will tell you how she died. If she is still alive, she won't be for long. 4 Officer Miller. Officer Miller comes in for coffee around 1 a.m. He is a regular. He is polite. He died in a shootout in 1998. The back of his head is missing. Do not stare at the wound. Do not offer him a donut. He cannot chew. I stopped reading. A chill, prickly and uncomfortable, washed over my neck. Okay, I said to the empty room. This is a hazing thing. Tex is messing with the new guy. Very funny. I grabbed a rag and started wiping down the counter, trying to distract myself. It was a joke. It had to be a joke, ding rasp. The door chime sounded. I jumped, dropping the rag. I looked up. A man was standing in the doorway. He was wearing a gray suit that looked slightly too big for him. He walked with a strange, jerky gait, like a marionette being pulled by an inexperienced puppeteer. He walked right up to the glass partition. His skin was pale, almost translucent. I could see the blue veins pulsing in his forehead. He didn't blink. Not once. Hello, he said. His voice was monotone, like a GPS navigation system. I would like the high-octane milk, please. My blood ran cold. I looked down at his hands. They were resting on the metal counter. His fingers were bending backward. I looked at the list. Rule number 2. If a customer asks for high-octane milk, tell them we are out. I swallowed hard. We're out of that, sir. The man's head tilted to the side. Snap. It tilted too far, resting on his shoulder at a 90-degree angle. Are you sure? He asked. I am very thirsty. I am very thirsty. The way he said it made my stomach churn. It wasn't a statement of need. It sounded like a threat. His head was still cocked at that impossible angle, his unblinking eyes boring into mine. I remembered the second part of the rule. If they insist, hand them a bottle of 10W-30 motor oil. My hands were shaking as I reached under the counter. Tex kept a few quarts of oil down there for restocking. I grabbed a bottle of Pennzoil 10W-30. The plastic felt slippery in my sweating palms. Here, I stammered, sliding the yellow bottle into the metal transfer drawer on the house. I pushed the drawer out toward him. The man stared at the oil. Slowly, with a series of sickening pops and clicks, his neck straightened out. He reached into the drawer with those backward, bending fingers and picked up the bottle. He didn't unscrew the cap. He didn't check the label. He brought the bottle to his mouth and bit the top off. Plastic and foil crunched between his teeth. Then, he tilted his head back and poured the thick amber sludge down his throat. He didn't swallow. He just let it pour. The oil overflowed from the corners of his mouth, staining his gray suit. But he didn't seem to notice. He downed the entire quart in 10 seconds. He dropped the empty bottle on the floor. It clattered loudly in the silence. Delicious, the man said. The vintage was excellent. He turned around, his entire body rotating on his heels, like a statue on a turntable, and stiffly walked out the door. I stood there, gripping the counter, staring at the puddle of oil on the linoleum. What the hell is this place? I whispered. I looked back at the list. I wasn't laughing anymore. I read the rest of it, memorizing every word, every bizarre instruction. The next few hours were torture. Every car that drove past on the highway made me flinch, but most of them kept going, their headlights sweeping across the front windows like searchlights before fading into the distance. At 1 a.m. exactly, a police cruiser pulled into the lot. It was an old model, a Crown Vic, the kind they stopped making years ago. The paint was faded, and the light bar on top was the old, school rotating kind. Not LEDs. Rule 4. Officer Miller. I watched as the door opened. A large man in a tan sheriff's deputy uniform stepped out. He adjusted his belt, put on his hat, and walked toward the entrance. He looked normal, a little pale maybe, but normal. He walked with a heavy, authoritative stride. Ding, rasp. Evening, son, Officer Miller said, nodding at me. He had a thick, friendly mustache and kind eyes. Quiet night. Oh, yes, sir, I managed to say. Just quiet. That's good. Keeps the raff away. He walked over to the coffee station. I watched him pour a cup. He took his time, adding 3 sugars and a lot of creamer. He stirred it slowly. He died in a shootout in 1998. The back of his head is missing. Do not stare at the wound. I forced myself to look at the register. I counted the buttons. I looked at the cigarette display. Anything but him. Miller walked up to the counter. "Just the coffee tonight, thanks." He placed a dollar bill on the counter. It was an old bill, one of the ones from the 90s with a smaller portrait of Washington. "Keep the change," he said with a smile. "Thanks, officer," I said, keeping my eyes locked on his badge. Deputy Miller, he turned to leave, and as he turned, the fluorescent lights overhead reflected off the back of his head. I couldn't help it. My eyes flicked up. There was nothing there, just a hollowed out cavity. Bone and gray matter dried and blackened like old jerky. I could see all the way to the back of his teeth. I gagged, clapping a hand over my mouth. Miller stopped. He didn't turn around. He just stood there, his hand on the door handle. "Something wrong, son?" His voice was deeper now. Less friendly, Rule 4. "Do not stare." "No, sir," I yelped. "Just choked on some spit, allergies, dust." Miller stood still for a long, agonizing second. Then he pushed the door open. "Take care of yourself," he said. "Dangerous roads out here." He left. I watched him get into his cruiser. He didn't start the engine. The car just rolled backward out of the spot and glided onto the highway, disappearing into the dark without a sound. I slumped onto the stool, my heart hammering against my ribs. I grabbed a bottle of water and downed half of it. "Okay," I breathed. "Okay, 1 down. Just 5 more hours." I checked the time. 1:15 a.m. I decided to clean up the oil spill from the milkman. I grabbed the mop bucket and unlocked the side door of the cage. Tex had said don't leave the cage, but the spill was right there in aisle 1. I couldn't just leave it. It was a slipping hazard. I stepped out onto the sales floor. The air felt colder out here, heavier. I mopped quickly, my eyes darting around the store. The shadows between the shelves seemed to stretch and twist. I was just finishing up when I heard it. Thump, a soft, heavy sound, like a wet bag of sand hitting the pavement. It came from the back of the store, near the coolers. I froze. I hadn't heard the door chime. Nobody had come in. "Hello?" I called out stupidly. Thump. It was closer now. Aisle 3. I dropped the mop and backed toward the cage. I fumbled for the keys on my belt loop. I saw a hand reach around the corner of the chip aisle. It was gray and bloated, like it had been in the water for weeks. It gripped the metal shelving, crushing a bag of Doritos. Then a face peeked out. It was wet, dripping. Seaweed was tangled in its hair. Its eyes were milky white. It opened its mouth, and water poured out onto the floor. "Bath," it gurgled. "Need bath." I didn't wait to see the rest of it. I scrambled back into the cage and slammed the door, locking the deadbolt, the slide bolt, and the padlock. The thing dragged itself into the main aisle. It didn't have legs, just a torso, trailing a long, dark slick of water and slime. I looked at the list frantically. Water monster, drowning victim, mermaid, nothing. There was no rule for this. "Oh God," I whispered. "Tex, you forgot one." The thing pulled itself toward the glass. It slapped a wet hand against the partition, leaving a smear of green slime. "Help," it mopped, so dry. It looked at the slushie machine behind me. The blue raspberry slushie. It wanted the liquid. I looked around. What could I do? I couldn't let it in. Then I saw the fire extinguisher mounted on the wall inside the cage. I grabbed it. "Hey," I shouted, banging the red canister against the glass. The thing looked at me. "We're closed," I yelled. "Cleaning time chemicals. Dangerous." The thing paused. It sniffed the air. It seemed to consider this. Then, slowly, painfully, it turned around and dragged itself toward the restrooms. It pushed the door open and disappeared inside. I heard the sound of a toilet flushing again. And again I stayed in the cage. I didn't care if the bathroom flooded. I wasn't going in there. 2 a.m. rolled around. The bathroom door was still closed. A black car pulled up to pump 4. It was a 1967 Chevy Impala, matte black, tinted windows. It looked like a hearse that had been chopped down into a sedan. It sat there, idling. The engine purred with a low, menacing rumble that vibrated the glass of the store. I looked at the list. Rule number 3. Wait. No, rule number 5. 5. The Black Impala. If a black car pulls up to pump 4, do not activate the pump. If the pump activates on its own, turn off the main breaker immediately. Do not look at the driver. Do not look at the passenger. If a child gets out of the car, hide in the freezer and do not come out until sunrise. The driver didn't get out. I watched the monitor for pump 4. The screen flickered. Authorizing no, I whispered. I didn't press anything. Pump active on the CCTV monitor. I watched in horror. The nozzle on pump 4 lifted out of its cradle. Nobody was holding it. It just floated in the air, drifting toward the gas cap of the Impala. The fuel cap unscrewed itself. Clink. The nozzle slid in. Crap, I hissed. Crap, crap, crap. Turn off the main breaker immediately. The breaker box was in the back room, outside the cage. I looked at the bathroom door where the drowning thing had gone. I looked at the Impala on the screen. The car started to shake. Violent seizure, like spasms. Smoke began to pour out of the exhaust. Thick, black smoke that didn't dissipate. It started to form shapes in the air. Skulls, screaming faces. I had to go to the back room. I unlocked the cage. My hands were shaking so bad I dropped the keys twice. I stepped out. The air in the store was freezing now. I could see my breath. I ran toward the back room, keeping one eye on the bathroom door. I burst into the storage area. It was dark, smelling of cardboard and dust. The breaker box was on the far wall. I sprinted to it, threw open the panel, and found the switch labeled pumps. I grabbed it and yanked it down. Chunk. The hum of the pumps outside died instantly. I let out a breath. Okay, good. I did it. I turned to go back to the cage, and there, standing in the doorway of the back room, blocking my exit, was a little girl. She was wearing a white dress, pristine and clean. She had a red ribbon in her hair. She looked adorable, except she was floating 6 inches off the ground, and her eyes were sewn shut. Rule 5. If a child gets out of the car, hide in the freezer and do not come out until sunrise. The freezer was right next to me. The wok. In cooler for the drinks. The girl tilted her head. She raised a finger to her lips. Shh, she hissed. Then she opened her mouth. It kept opening wider, until her jaw unhinged and her mouth was a gaping black maw the size of a dinner plate. She screamed. It wasn't a human scream. It was the sound of metal tearing, of glass breaking. I threw myself backward, yanked open the heavy silver door of the wok, and freezer, and dove inside. I slammed the door shut and engaged the safety latch from the inside. I was trapped in the cold, surrounded by racks of beer and soda, and outside, the scratching began. I huddled in the corner of the wok, in freezer, shivering violently. It wasn't just the cold, though the industrial fan blasting sub. Zero air down my neck certainly didn't help. It was the sound coming from the other side of the heavy insulated door. Scritch, scritch, scritch. It sounded like someone was running a coin along the metal, testing it, looking for a seam. Go away, I whispered, my teeth chattering. Please just go away. I checked my phone. 2:15 a.m. Rule 5 said hide until sunrise. Sunrise wasn't for another 4 hours. I was going to freeze to death. I was wearing a thin polyester uniform shirt. I hugged my knees to my chest, trying to conserve warmth. I looked around the freezer. Racks of Bud Light, Monster Energy, and milk. I remembered the high-octane milk guy. I wondered if he had come from a place like this. Suddenly, the scratching stopped. The silence was worse. I strained my ears, listening for footsteps, for breathing, for that terrible metallic scream. Nothing. Had she gone? I waited 10 minutes. Then 20. My fingers were starting to go numb. I knew the signs of hypothermia, confusion. Sleepiness. If I stayed in here much longer, I wouldn't wake up. I had to risk it. I crawled to the door. I put my hand on the latch. It was freezing cold, biting into my skin. I pushed. The door didn't budge. I pushed harder, putting my shoulder into it. Nothing. It felt like it was welded shut. Panic flared in my chest. Had the girl locked it from the outside? Or had the ice sealed it? "Hey," I yelled, banging on the metal. "Let me out." Then I saw it. There was a small glass viewing window in the door, about eye level. It was frosted over with condensation. I wiped it with my sleeve. Looking back at me, pressed against the glass on the other side, was a single, giant, yellow eye. It blinked. The pupil was a horizontal slit, like a goat's. "Open," a voice rumbled. It vibrated the door against my chest. Cold, hungry. It wasn't the girl. It was something else. Something bigger. I backed away, stumbling over a crate of milk. I fell hard, glass bottles shattering around me. The eye disappeared. Then, a massive fist slammed into the door. Boom! The metal buckled inward. Boom! The hinges groaned. I scrambled backward, crawling deeper into the maze of shelves. I hid behind a stack of kegs in the far corner. Boom! The door flew open. Warm, humid air rushed into the freezer, creating a thick fog instantly. Through the mist, a figure stepped in. It was tall, 7 feet at least. It wore a yellow raincoat and a rain hat that obscured its face. It held a rusty hook in one hand. The tall man. I didn't remember a rule about a tall man. I frantically tried to recall the list. Had I missed one? He walked slowly down the aisle of beer, his heavy boots crunching on the broken glass. He was sniffing the air. New meat, he wheezed. He stopped at the milk section. He picked up a carton, crushed it in his hand, and let the milk spill over his glove. He was getting closer to my hiding spot. I saw a vent near the floor behind the kegs. It was small, maybe for drainage or air circulation. I didn't know where it went, but it was away from him. I grabbed a loose metal pipe from the shelving unit, a support bracket that had rusted off. I threw a can of soda across the room. Clang. The tall man whipped around, his hook slashing through a case of Coors Light. Beer sprayed everywhere. While he was distracted, I kicked the grate off the vent and squeezed inside. It was tight. Claustrophobic, I had to pull myself along with my elbows. It smelled of mold and dead rats. I crawled for what felt like miles, but was probably only 20 feet. I could hear the tall man roaring in the freezer behind me, tearing shelves apart. Finally, I saw light ahead. I pushed through another grate and tumbled out onto a linoleum floor. I was back in the main store. Behind the counter, inside the cage, I gasped for air, scrambling to my feet. I looked at the freezer door across the store. It was hanging off its hinges. The tall man was still inside thrashing. I slammed the cage door shut and locked it. All 3 locks. Then I grabbed a chair and jammed it under the handle. I collapsed on the stool, shaking uncontrollably. 3:33 a.m. The phone rang. Bearing. I stared at it. The caller ID lit up, Mom. Rule 3. Do not answer it. Bearing. It was loud, piercing. My mom lived in Florida. She was fine. I had talked to her yesterday, Bearing. Don't pick it up, I whispered. Don't do it. But a treacherous part of my brain whispered, what if it is her? What if something happened? I reached for the cord. If the phone rings at 3:33 a.m., unplug it. I grabbed the cord from the wall jack and yanked. The ringing stopped. Silence returned to the store. I let out a sigh of relief. Then, the phone rang again. It wasn't plugged in. The cord was dangling in my hand, but the phone on the counter was ringing. Bearing. And now the speakerphone light clicked on. A voice filled the small glass cage. It was my mother's voice, but it sounded hollow. Michael. I covered my ears. Number not real. Not real. Michael, why didn't you answer? It hurts, Michael. The fire. It burns so much. You're not my mom, I screamed. My mom is alive. Not for long, sweetie. Not for long. The man in the yellow coat is asking for directions to her house. I froze. The tall man. I looked at the freezer. The thrashing had stopped. The tall man was standing in the doorway of the freezer, looking across the store at me. He held up a piece of paper, a map. He pointed at it with his hook. Then he pointed at the phone. The voice on the speakerphone screamed. A long, agonizing shriek of pain that shattered the light bulb above my head. Glass rained down on me. The store went dark, except for the flickering neon sign outside. Stop, go, stop, go. In the strobe light effect of the sign, I saw the tall man moving. He wasn't walking. He was gliding. And he was coming toward the cage. I grabbed the shotgun Tex kept under the counter. I didn't know if it would work on these things, but it was better than nothing. I pumped it. Chushke. Come and get some, I yelled, trying to sound brave, but sounding mostly like a terrified kid. The tall man reached the glass. He raised his hook. He didn't attack the glass. He tapped on it, gently. Tap, tap, tap. He held up a pack of cigarettes, an old crumpled pack. He pointed to the register. He wanted to pay, I blinked. Was he a customer? I looked at the list. I scanned it frantically in the dark, using the light from my phone. There was nothing about a tall man, but there was a general rule at the bottom, written in red ink. 6. The golden rule. If they want to buy something, let them buy it. Commerce is the only language they understand. Never deny a sale unless specifically instructed. He wanted to buy the cigarettes he had brought in. I lowered the shotgun slightly. $2, I croaked. The tall man reached into his coat. He pulled out 2 coins. They were gold. Ancient. They looked like Spanish doubloons. He slid them into the metal transfer drawer. I pulled the drawer in. The coins were heavy, cold. I pushed the drawer back out. Have a nice night, I whispered. The tall man took his cigarettes. He tipped his hat, and then he dissolved. He didn't walk away. He just turned into a cloud of yellow smoke, was sucked into the air conditioning vent. I sat there, staring at the gold coins. 4 a.m. 2 hours left. I thought the worst was over. Then I heard the sound of a bicycle bell. Ring, ring. I looked at the front door. A boy was sitting on a bicycle just outside the glass. He looked about 10 years old. He was wearing a striped shirt and a baseball cap. He was perfectly normal, except he had no face, just smooth blank skin. He raised a hand and knocked on the glass. Knock, Tanak. Can I come in? A voice said. It came from the radio on the shelf behind me, which had turned itself on. Can I come in? The radio static buzzed. I lost my puppy. I looked at the list. Rule number 5 mentioned a child, but that was from the black car. This was a bike. We're closed, I yelled. Open the door, Mike, the radio said. We know you're in there. We know your name. The boy on the bike started to change. His arms elongated. His fingers grew claws. The bike melted into his legs, fusing with his flesh, turning him into a half. Boy half. Machine monstrosity of chrome and bone. He rammed the glass. Crack. The bulletproof glass spider-webbed. He rammed it again. Crash. A hole opened up. The thing squeezed through. Its metal. Flesh gears grinding. I backed up against the cigarette rack. I raised the shotgun. I pulled the trigger. Click. It wasn't loaded. Tex hadn't left me any ammo. You gotta be kidding me, I whimpered. The bike. Boy monster lunged. The creature lunged, a mass of grinding gears and wet, slapping flesh. I dove to the left, crashing into the lottery machine stand. The bike. Boy smashed into the cigarette rack where I had been standing a second ago, sending packs of Marlboros exploding like confetti. Mike. The radio buzzed, the voice distorted and overlapping with itself. Play with me. I scrambled over the counter, glass from the broken partition slicing my palms. I hit the floor on the customer side and didn't look back. I sprinted for the front door. It was locked. Not just locked. The deadbolt had been melted. The metal was fused into a solid lump of slag. No, no, no! I screamed, rattling the handle. I turned around. The creature was disentangling itself from the wreckage of the counter. Its head, that smooth, faceless oval, swiveled toward me. A horizontal slit tore open where a mouth should be, revealing rows of serrated, rusty metal teeth. It hissed like a steam engine. I had nowhere to go. The front door was sealed. The cage was compromised. The bathrooms were flooded by the drowning thing. Wait, the drowning thing. I looked at the bathroom door. Water was still seeping out from under it. Rule 6. Commerce is the only language they understand. This thing didn't want to buy anything. It wanted to play. But maybe I could sell it to someone else. I grabbed a bag of beef jerky from the rack next to me. "Hey," I yelled at the bike. "Monster, over here, you ugly scraffy." The creature shrieked and charged, its metal limbs sparking against the linoleum. I ran, not toward the door, but toward the bathrooms. I slid on the wet floor, barely keeping my balance. I reached the men's room door. I could hear the gurgle of the thing inside. The bike monster was 10 feet away, 5 feet. I threw the door open. "Customer service," I screamed. I dove to the side just as the bike monster leaped. It sailed through the open doorway, straight into the flooded darkness of the bathroom. Splash. A roar shook the walls, a wet, gurgling bellow of rage. Then the sound of metal screeching, gears grinding against something soft and heavy. The bike monster shrieked, a high, pitched mechanical wail that was abruptly cut short by a wet crunch. I slammed the bathroom door shut and threw my body weight against it. Thud thud. Something massive hit the door from the inside. The wood splintered. "Stay in there," I yelled, looking for something to brace it with. I saw a mop handle leaning against the wall. I jammed it under the doorknob, wedging it against the floor tiles. The banging continued for a minute, then faded into a low churning sound, like a garbage disposal chewing on a spoon. I slid down the wall, gasping for breath. My uniform was torn, my hands were bleeding, and I smelled like oil and fear. I checked my phone. 5:55 a.m., 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes until Tex came back. I crawled back to the counter area, avoiding the broken glass. I sat on the floor outside the cage, clutching the empty shotgun like a teddy bear. I watched the horizon through the front windows. Slowly, agonizingly, the sky began to turn from black to a bruised purple. Then, headlights. A beat. Up Ford truck pulled into the lot. Tex. I have never been so happy to see a grumpy old man in my life. He walked to the door, looked at the melted lock, and sighed. He pulled out a heavy ring of keys, selected a strange-looking skeleton key, and jammed it into the fused metal. With a twist, the door popped open. Tex walked in. He looked at the shattered partition. He looked at the destroyed cigarette rack. He looked at the bathroom door wedged shut with a mop. Finally, he looked at me. "Busy night?" he asked, popping a fresh toothpick into his mouth. "Busy?" I laughed hysterically. "Busy?" A monster ate a bike. Kid in the bathroom. A tall man melted through the freezer. "And your shotgun isn't loaded." Tex nodded slowly. "Yeah. Ammo's expensive, besides. It's just for show. They don't die anyway." He walked over to the coffee pot, which had miraculously survived the chaos, and poured himself a cup. "You did good, kid," he said. "Most don't make it past 3 a.m. I stood up, my legs wobbly. "I quit. I'm done. Keep the money, I'm leaving." "You can't," Tex said calmly. "Watch me." I grabbed my backpack and headed for the door. "Look at the roster, Mike." I stopped. The employee roster was pinned to the corkboard by the door. I looked at it. Monday, Tex Tuesday, Tex Wednesday. Mike, my name was there. But it wasn't written in marker. It was burned into the paper. The edges of the letters were smoking slightly. "What did you do?" I whispered. "I didn't do anything," Tex said. "The station chooses. It likes you. You have a knack for customer service." "I'm not coming back," I said. "You'll go to the police." "Officer Miller," Tex chuckled. "He'll just write you a ticket for loitering." I stared at him. "Why? Why does this place exist?" Tex took a sip of coffee. "You think Route 66 just died because of the interstate. Number of the road changed. It became thin. Things from the other side started leaking through. This station, it's a checkpoint, a feeder. We give him oil, we give him smokes, we let him vent. If we don't serve him here, they go into town, they go to the houses, they go to the schools." He looked at me with those gray, tired eyes. "You saved a lot of people tonight, Mike. You just don't know it." I looked at the roster again. My name seemed to pulse. I need the tuition money, I said quietly. He'll double your rate, Tex said. And he'll buy you some shells for the shotgun, salt rounds. They sting. I looked out at my car. I looked at the sunrise. I thought about the bike, monster. I thought about the tall man, and then I thought about the gold coins the tall man had left in the drawer. I walked back to the register. I opened the drawer. The coins were gone. In their place was a stack of cash, $100 bills. Thick, must have been $5,000 easily. Hazard pay, Tex said. Tall man tips well. I picked up the money. It felt warm. See you tomorrow night, Tex, I said. Tex grinned, revealing teeth that looked like yellow tombstones. See you tomorrow, kid. And hey, we stocked the 10W-30. We're running low. I walked out to my car. As I drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror. The O in the stop and go sign finally burned out completely. Now it just read stop in G, or maybe stop in ghoul. I laughed. It was a crazy manic sound. I turned on the radio. Static hissed. See you soon, Mike, a child's voice whispered. I turned the radio off. I'm writing this from my dorm room. I have the money. I paid my tuition. I even bought a new laptop. But tonight is Wednesday, and my shift starts in 4 hours. I went to the hardware store today. I bought a chainsaw and a lot of salt. If the customers want service, I'm going to give it to them. But I have a question for you guys. Does anyone know how to kill a man made of coins? Because I think he's waiting in my closet right now. Let me know in the comments. I need answers before my shift starts. I pulled into the lot at 9:59 p.m. The neon sign buzzed a greeting. Stop in G. The O flickered once. Then stayed off. I walked to the door. The melted lock had been replaced. It was brand new, shiny brass. Tex was waiting for me. He was holding a cup of coffee. He didn't look surprised. Right on time, he said. He handed me the keys. I see you met Miller on the road, Tex said. Has a good recruiter. I hate you, I said, taking the keys. You'll get over it. Tex grabbed his jacket. Oh, by the way, new rule added to the list. Check it before you start. Tex walked out. He didn't run this time. He whistled. I locked the door behind him. I walked to the counter. I looked at the laminated sheet. There was a fresh strip of tape at the bottom. 7. The night manager. The night manager is allowed to use the shotgun. The shells are in the safe. Combination is the date of your death. Check the coin man's eyes if you forgot. I stared at the safe under the counter. The door chime rang. Ding. Rasp. I looked up. Standing in the doorway was the man with the coin eyes. He walked to the counter. He placed a pack of Lucky Strikes on the glass. I believe, he droned, his head tilting to the side. I believe you have my change. I looked at the coins over his eyes. They were silver dollars, 1922. Wait, number. I leaned closer. The date on the left coin wasn't a mint date, it read, 2084. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. 60 years, I had 60 years. I looked at the safe. I spun the dial. 2284. Click. The safe popped open. Inside was a box of shells. Bright red etched with runes I didn't recognize. I loaded the shotgun. Chech K. I looked at the coin man. We don't sell Lucky Strikes, I said, my voice steady. The coin man smiled. It was a horrible skin-splitting grin. Then what do you sell? I raised the shotgun. I pointed it at the sign that said we reserve the right to refuse service. We sell consequences, I said. The coin man laughed. It sounded like change rattling in a dryer. I like you, Mike, he said. This is going to be a fun shift. He turned and walked out. I watched him go. I looked at the shotgun. I looked at the coffee pot. I poured myself a cup, black. The phone rang. 3:33 a.m. Wait, the clock on the wall skipped ahead. Time doesn't work here. I picked up the phone before it could ring twice. This is Mike, I said. Stop and go. How can I help you? Static hissed. Is my baby there? I looked at the freezer. The door was buckling again. Hold on, Mom, I said. racking the shotgun again. Let me check the back. I walked out of the cage, and Mike. I'm the night manager, and I have a list of customers I need to evict. If you're ever driving down Route 66 and you see a flickering neon sign, keep driving, unless you need gas. But if you come inside, mind the rules. And don't look at the milk. And whatever you do, don't ask for Tex, 'cause retired.